It all happened on a day much like any other, about 66 million years ago. The Earth was a vibrant, thriving world, dominated by colossal creatures we call the non-avian dinosaurs. They were the undisputed rulers of the planet, a dynasty that had lasted for over 150 million years. But cosmic events don't care about dynasties or rulers. On that fateful day, a visitor from deep space arrived. An asteroid, estimated to be around 10 to 15 kilometers wide, hurtled through our atmosphere at an incredible speed. It was a mountain of rock and metal, a messenger of doom from the cosmos, on a direct collision course with our planet, a cosmic blind date with destiny. The point of impact was a shallow sea off the coast of what we now know as the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The energy released by this collision was staggering, equivalent to billions of atomic bombs exploding all at once. It carved out a massive crater, the Chicxulub crater, over 180 kilometers in diameter. This wasn't just a local event, it was a planetary catastrophe. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the Earth's crust, triggering earthquakes of unimaginable magnitude across the globe. It was the beginning of the end for the Cretaceous period, and the dawn of a new, terrifying chapter in the history of life on Earth. The sky itself was torn asunder. The story of this extinction, the Cretaceous-Paleogene or KPG extinction event, is written in a thin layer of clay found all over the world. This layer is rich in iridium, an element that is rare in the Earth's crust but common in asteroids. It's the geological tombstone marking the final resting place of about 75% of all species on the planet. The dinosaurs, with their immense size and global dominance, were the most famous victims. But they were not alone. Countless other species on land and in the sea were wiped from existence in a geological blink of an eye. The world was fundamentally and irrevocably changed. Understanding this event is crucial because it's a powerful reminder of our planet's place in the universe. We live in a cosmic shooting gallery, and sometimes Earth is the target. The Chicxulub impact wasn't just about destruction, it was also about opportunity. The fall of the giants created a void, an empty stage waiting for new actors to appear. The story of survival is just as compelling as the story of extinction. It's a tale of how the small, the adaptable, and the lucky inherited a world cleansed by fire and shrouded in darkness, setting the stage for the rise of a new kind of life, including, eventually, us. The moments following the impact were a vision of hell on Earth. The initial blast vaporized rock and water, sending a superheated plume of debris high into the atmosphere. This material, including molten rock and glass, didn't stay up there for long. It rained back down across the globe, re-entering the atmosphere as billions of tiny, fiery meteors. This celestial bombardment heated the upper atmosphere to broiling temperatures, effectively turning the sky into a gigantic oven. The intense heat ignited widespread wildfires on every continent, incinerating vast forests and grasslands. The world was literally set ablaze, a planetary inferno fueled by the cosmic collision. As if the fires weren't enough, the impact in the shallow sea triggered colossal tsunamis. Waves hundreds of meters high radiated outwards from the impact site, scouring coastlines for thousands of kilometers in every direction. These mega tsunamis washed far inland, destroying everything in their path and depositing layers of chaotic debris that geologists can still study today. The seismic shock waves from the impact also triggered volcanic eruptions around the world, adding more ash, dust, and toxic gases to an already choked atmosphere. The immediate physical destruction was almost total in many regions, a symphony of geological violence on an unprecedented scale. The most profound and long-lasting effect, however, was the darkness. The immense cloud of pulverized rock, soot from the global fires, and sulfur compounds from the impact site was so thick that it completely blocked out the sun. A nuclear winter scenario descended upon the Earth. For months, perhaps even years, the planet was plunged into a cold, eerie twilight. Without sunlight, photosynthesis, the very foundation of most of the planet's food chains, ground to a halt. Plants on land and phytoplankton in the oceans withered and died on a massive scale. The planetary engine of life was sputtering, starved of its primary energy source. This dramatic shift had a cascade of devastating consequences. The lack of sunlight caused global temperatures to plummet after the initial heat pulse. The atmosphere itself was transformed. The vaporized rock released enormous amounts of carbon dioxide, which would eventually lead to long-term warming, but the immediate effect was a toxic cocktail. Oxygen levels dropped significantly, and the air filled with poisonous gases like sulfur dioxide, which mixed with water to create torrents of acid rain. This acid rain poisoned the soil and acidified the surface waters of the oceans, creating a truly hostile environment for any life that had survived the initial blast and fires. The very traits that had made the non-avian dinosaurs so successful for millions of years became their downfall in this new hostile world. Their size was their most prominent feature, and it became their greatest vulnerability. A large animal like a Tyrannosaurus rex or a Triceratops required enormous amounts of food to sustain its metabolism. A single large herbivore would need to consume hundreds of kilograms of plant matter every single day. When the sun vanished and the plants died, the food supply for these giants disappeared almost overnight. The entire food web collapsed from the bottom up, and the largest consumers were the first to starve. Their large bodies also made it impossible for them to find adequate shelter. Where could a 40-foot-long, 9-ton predator hide from a sky-raining fire and acid? There were no burrows large enough, no caves deep enough to escape the global catastrophe unfolding on the surface. They were completely exposed to the elements, the searing heat pulse, the freezing cold of the impact winter, and the toxic acid-laced rain. Smaller animals could burrow underground or seek refuge in water, but the dinosaurs were trapped on a dying surface. Their reign had been built on a stable, resource-rich environment, and they were utterly unprepared for its sudden and total collapse. Furthermore, the reproductive cycle of large dinosaurs likely worked against them. Like many large animals today, they probably had long incubation periods for their eggs, and took many years to reach sexual maturity. In a rapidly changing, high-stress environment, this slow pace of life is a significant disadvantage. There simply wasn't enough time to produce a new generation before the old ones succumbed to starvation or exposure. The world was changing faster than they could adapt or reproduce. The very biology that had allowed them to dominate for eons was now a fatal liability, sealing their fate in this new world order. So the story of the dinosaurs' extinction is a tragic irony. Their magnificence was their undoing. They were highly specialized, perfectly adapted to the world of the Cretaceous. But specialization is risky when the world changes. The impact didn't just kill the dinosaurs, it wiped out the specific environmental conditions they needed to exist. The collapse of the food chain, their inability to find shelter, and their slow reproductive rates created a perfect storm of extinction. The kings of the earth were dethroned not by a superior competitor, but by the cold, indifferent physics of a rock from space. While the dinosaurs were facing their final moments, a very different kind of creature was scuttling in the shadows, waiting for its chance. These were our ancient mammalian ancestors. During the age of dinosaurs, mammals were generally small, often no bigger than a modern rat or shrew. They lived in the ecological niches that the dinosaurs didn't occupy, often nocturnal and burrowing. This humble lifestyle, living in the margins of the world, turned out to be their ticket to survival. Their small size was a tremendous advantage in the post-impact world. A small body requires far less food to survive. When the global food chain collapsed, these tiny mammals could get by on the scraps. They were generalists, not picky eaters. They could feast on insects, worms, roots, and the decaying organic matter that was suddenly abundant. While the giant herbivores starved for lack of fresh vegetation, our ancestors found sustenance in the world's detritus. Their ability to eat almost anything was a key survival trait. Furthermore, their small size made it easy to find shelter. They could burrow deep underground, insulating themselves from the temperature swings, the acid rain, and the chaos on the surface. They literally waited out the apocalypse in their subterranean bunkers. The burrowing lifestyle offered more than just protection from the elements. It also provided a more stable microclimate. Deep underground, temperatures remain relatively constant, shielding inhabitants from the freezing cold of the impact winter and the subsequent heat. Burrows would have also provided access to food sources that were unavailable on the surface, such as roots, tubers, and hibernating insects. This ability to escape the harsh surface conditions was something the dinosaurs simply did not have. Our mammalian forerunners weren't stronger or smarter in the conventional sense. They were just better at hiding and making do with less. This period of devastation acted as a great filter. It selected for traits like small size, a generalist diet, and the ability to find or create shelter. The mammals of the late Cretaceous had these traits in abundance. While the world above was a wasteland, they were surviving and in some cases, perhaps even thriving in their hidden world. They weathered the storm, and when the dust finally settled and the sun returned, they emerged into a world free from their colossal reptilian oppressors. The stage was set for them to diversify and fill the ecological vacuum left by the dinosaurs. Among the survivors of the Great Extinction were the crocodilians, ancient reptiles that had shared the world with dinosaurs for millions of years. At a glance, they looked like dinosaurs, but their internal biology and lifestyle gave them a crucial edge. One of their most remarkable adaptations is an incredibly slow metabolism. This allows them to endure long periods without food. Modern crocodiles have been observed surviving for more than a year without a single meal. In a world where the food supply had vanished, this ability to simply wait for conditions to improve was a life-saving trait. While other large predators starved, the crocodilians could power down and ride it out. Their semi-aquatic lifestyle also provided a powerful buffer against the worst effects of the impact. Rivers, lakes, and swamps acted as natural shelters. When the sky rained fire, they could simply submerge themselves in the water. The water also protected them from the extreme temperature fluctuations on the surface. Furthermore, aquatic ecosystems, while severely damaged, recovered differently than terrestrial ones. The food web was based on detritus, the decaying organic matter from all the dead plants and animals that washed into the waterways. Crocodilians, as opportunistic scavengers, had an abundant if gruesome food source. Another key advantage was their efficient respiratory system. Crocodiles possess a unique circulatory system that allows them to make the most of every breath, a useful skill in the low oxygen atmosphere that followed the impact. They could hold their breath for long periods underwater, further isolating them from the toxic air on the surface. Their entire biology is geared towards conservation and efficiency, making them incredibly resilient to environmental stress. They are masters of a low-energy lifestyle, a perfect strategy for surviving a global catastrophe that shuts down the planet's primary productivity. So, while their dinosaur cousins perished, the crocodilians persisted. They are a testament to the power of a conservative survival strategy. They didn't need to be fast or warm-blooded, they needed to be tough and patient. Their ability to fast, their reliance on aquatic ecosystems for food and shelter, and their efficient physiology allowed them to pass through the extinction filter that claimed so many other large reptiles. They are living fossils in the truest sense, survivors who watched the world of the dinosaurs burn and then simply carried on, as they had for millions of years before. Turtles and tortoises are another group of survivors that seem almost designed to weather an apocalypse. Their most obvious feature, the shell, is a remarkable piece of biological engineering. It's really a portable, impregnable fortress. This protective shell offered an immediate defense against many of the post-impact horrors. It could shield them from falling debris, acid rain, and even attacks from desperate, starving predators. When the world became too hostile, a turtle could simply retract its head and limbs into its bony sanctuary and wait. This built-in shelter was a survival advantage that few other animals possessed. Like crocodiles, turtles have a very slow metabolism. This metabolic efficiency means they require very little food and oxygen to survive. Many species of turtles and tortoises are capable of hibernating or estivating. That's a state of dormancy during hot or dry periods, for incredibly long periods. It's plausible that many turtles simply went to sleep and slept through the worst of the impact winter. They could have burrowed into the mud at the bottom of a pond or dug a deep hole on land and entered a state of suspended animation. Their bodily functions slowed to a bare minimum, until the environment became habitable again. Their dietary habits also contributed to their resilience. Many turtles are omnivores or scavengers, not reliant on a single food source. They could eat insects, worms, carrion, and aquatic vegetation or roots, whatever was available in their sheltered, often aquatic environments. Much like the crocodilians, they benefited from the massive amount of decaying organic matter that filled the world's waterways. Their ability to switch food sources and make do with what was left was critical when the primary producers of the food chain had been wiped out. They are the ultimate survivalists, equipped to handle scarcity. The fossil record supports this story of resilience. Turtles have been around for over 200 million years, and they have survived not just one, but multiple mass extinction events with their diversity largely intact. About 80% of turtle species from the Cretaceous made it through the KPG extinction. Their combination of physical protection, a slow metabolism, the ability to enter long periods of dormancy, and a flexible diet created the perfect survival toolkit. They are a quiet, unassuming, but incredibly successful group, proving that sometimes the slow and steady really do win the race. The Chicxulub impact was devastating for marine life, especially in the upper layers of the ocean. The acidification of the surface waters and the lack of sunlight wiped out the plankton, which formed the base of the ocean's food web. This led to the extinction of many large marine reptiles like the mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, as well as the iconic ammonites. However, the oceans are vast and deep, and they provided a refuge for many species. The effects of the impact were less severe in deeper waters, which acted as a sanctuary from the chaos raging on the surface. Remarkably, over 90% of bony fish species survived the extinction event. Many fish live in deeper water or have life cycles that don't entirely depend on the sunlit surface layer. They could feed on the marine snow, the continuous shower of detritus falling from the upper ocean, which became a massive feast after the mass die-off. Fish that lived in freshwater river systems were also buffered from the worst of the ocean acidification. Their adaptability and sheer diversity allowed them to weather the storm and repopulate the seas once conditions stabilized. Sharks also proved to be incredibly resilient, with about 80% of their species surviving. Sharks are ancient creatures, having been around for over 400 million years. They have survived multiple mass extinctions. Many shark species are deep water dwellers, and like other survivors, they are not picky eaters. As powerful predators and scavengers, they could take advantage of the abundance of carcasses in the post-impact oceans. Their hardiness and adaptability, honed over hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary history, saw them through this crisis as well. Other marine invertebrates, like the ancient jellyfish, also persisted. Having existed for over 500 million years, they are masters of survival, able to thrive in a wide range of conditions, including low-oxygen environments. The key to marine survival seems to be similar to survival on land, being able to escape the worst of the direct effects and being able to adapt to a new food web based on decay rather than sunlight. The oceans acted as a giant buffer, absorbing some of the impact's energy and providing deep, dark pockets where life could hold on until the sun returned. The surface of the Earth was scorched and barren after the impact. The darkness from the atmospheric dust cloud meant that any plants that survived the initial fires could not photosynthesize and soon withered and died. It would seem like a total victory for death and destruction. But life is persistent, and for plants, the secret to survival lay dormant, hidden beneath the ground. While the forests burned and the leaves crumbled to dust, a vast bank of seeds, spores and rhizomes lay protected in the soil. These tiny packages of life were insulated from the chaos on the surface, waiting patiently for their moment. The first plants to make a comeback were the ferns. This is so common after ecological disasters that geologists call the first post-impact layer a fern spike. Ferns reproduce from spores, which are tiny, lightweight, and can be dispersed over vast distances by the wind. They can tolerate disturbed, low-nutrient soils and thrive in the initial low-light conditions. As the dust cloud began to thin, they formed a green carpet over the devastated landscape, stabilizing the soil and beginning the slow process of ecological recovery. They were the pioneers of the New World, the first sign that life was returning. As the skies continued to clear and sunlight returned to the planet in full force, the dormant seeds of flowering plants began to germinate. Rains, no longer acidic, washed the toxins from the soil and provided the water needed for new growth. The world began its slow transformation back from a gray, dusty wasteland to a green, vibrant planet. The forests that eventually grew back were different from the ones that had been there before the impact. The composition of species had changed, reflecting the new opportunities and the new climate that emerged from the catastrophe. This rebirth of the plant kingdom was the essential final step for the recovery of animal life. The return of vegetation rebuilt the foundation of the food web. It provided food for the surviving herbivores, which in turn provided food for the carnivores. The new forests offered shelter and created new habitats, driving the diversification of the animal species that had made it through the extinction. The resilience of plant life, their ability to wait out the apocalypse as seeds and spores, is what ultimately made the recovery of the entire planetary ecosystem possible. The extinction of the dinosaurs was not just an end, it was a profound beginning. Their disappearance created an enormous ecological vacuum. For 150 million years, dinosaurs had occupied nearly every major terrestrial ecological niche for medium to large-sized animals. With them gone, these roles, the large herbivores, the apex predators, the mid-sized browsers, were suddenly vacant. This event, known as adaptive radiation, is a recurring theme in the history of life. When a dominant group vanishes, it opens the door for another group to step in, diversify, and flourish. The KPG extinction was the ultimate open door. The humble mammals, having survived the cataclysm by hiding and scraping by, were perfectly positioned to seize this opportunity. In the millions of years that followed the impact, during a period called the Paleocene and Eocene epochs, mammals underwent an explosive diversification. They rapidly evolved to fill the empty niches. Small, shrew-like creatures evolved into a dazzling array of new forms. Some became larger, developing into the first large mammalian herbivores. Others became dedicated predators, taking the place of the tyrannosaurs. They climbed trees, returned to the water, and even took to the air. The world they inherited was a different place. The climate was changing, and the new forests that grew back were different from the pre-impact ecosystems. This new environment drove mammalian evolution in new directions. Without the constant pressure of dinosaur predation, mammals could afford to grow larger and become more specialized. This led to the rise of many of the major mammalian groups we know today, including the ancestors of primates, rodents, hoofed animals, and carnivores. The world was being repopulated and reshaped by a new class of animals. The story of the post-extinction world is our story. The fall of the dinosaurs directly enabled the rise of the mammals, and from one small branch of the mammalian tree, primates would eventually emerge, leading after tens of millions of more years of evolution to us. We exist because a rock from space cleared the stage 66 million years ago. It's a humbling thought. The history of life on Earth is a story of chance, catastrophe, and resilience. The new dawn that broke after the long impact winter was the dawn of the age of mammals, an era that continues to this day.